So, once again, Mr. President, Vice Presidents, Presidents of the Group, and distinguished members, as a former mayor of the town of Dingley and an alternate member of the Committee of the Regions, it is an additional special pleasure for me to be here today and to present the priorities of the Maltese Presidency of the Council of the European Union. Malta believes that local and regional authorities are vital to the democratic life of the European Union and are key actors in the conception and implementation of common European policies. It is for this reason that the Committee of the Regions' role should not be underestimated, and we are very keen to give it the appropriate and deserved attention during our presidency. Indeed, while I am here to explain the priorities of our presidency, I am also here to listen to your assessment of what is relevant at a local and regional level at this crucial moment in time in the history of the European Union and the time of change in the global scenario. Malta's turn as the presidency of the Council of the EU comes at a time of high expectations, but also of unusual challenges. Both the Commission and the European Parliament are now midway through their current institutional cycle. The time has now arrived for the new ideas, programs and projects that have matured over the last 2.5 years to start bearing fruit. The successful conclusion last year of the interinstitutional agreement on better law making between the Council, the European Parliament and the Commission has enhanced coherence and transparency in the Union's programming processes. Over the coming weeks and months, we have a very substantial and impressive body of legislation to go through. Our citizens expect that the outcome of these efforts will bring about clear and tangible measures of improvement in their daily lives. At the same time, the Union is facing what many define as existential challenges. For over half a century, the European process helped to bring about unprecedented peace, security and prosperity to a historically divided continent. It has been so successful in this enterprise that European citizens often taken for granted the beneficial results of what has truly been a remarkable and complex evolution. We all agree that the EU needs to adapt to the new challenges it has to face. Today, our citizens are focused on the more immediate and personal issues, and in particular the economic and social conditions surrounding their daily lives. The lingering effects of the financial crisis in terms of unemployment and wealth inequalities, the impact of uncontrolled migration, and the uncertainties of the security situation continue to influence attitudes towards the role and relevance of the Union. I believe that at times citizens are not convinced that the Union truly represents their interests. Often, the decision-making process in Brussels is being perceived as removed from the real-life concerns of the European citizens, and ordinary citizens feel an increasing sense of uncertainty and betrayal. As a consequence, a significant number of citizens feel that responses to the issues which concern them directly can be more effectively dealt with at national level than they may be at European level. And the UK's decision, the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union can be seen as forming part of what is happening in the rest of Europe, both in its impact on popular attitudes, as well as in the way it could affect the future of the European process. And it is in this context that the objective of the Maltese Presidency to intensify efforts to bring the European Union and this process closer to the individual citizens assumes its importance. The triggering of Article 50, which will formally launch the Brexit process, is now imminent. The European Union is well prepared to go into the detailed negotiations, where we will seek a fair and mutually productive new relationship with the United Kingdom. Throughout this process, the Maltese Presidency will keep in mind two guiding objectives. One is to persevere in our determination to safeguard the single market built around the four freedoms, and the other is to ensure that within the excitement that Brexit will inevitably generate, we still maintain a clear and being focused on the continuing work on the European project itself. Malta's cooperation with the Committee of the Regions has been very concrete in the run-up to the presidency, and this cooperation continued with the recent meeting between our Prime Minister and President Marcola himself. With the help and support of the Maltese members of the Committee of the Regions, we have also identified entrepreneurship on islands contributing towards territorial cohesion as the topic of our referral opinion, and we are pleased that consultations with the rapporteur, Ms. Mauperius, have started already. The landing point of the opinion will be an econ seminar which will be held in Malta. Last week, together with the Maltese delegation of the Committee of the Regions, like President Marcola already referred to, we organized a town hall debate entitled Reunion, Reflecting on Europe. And although we have a thorough policy program tackling the most pressing issue, reunion is the central theme of our presidency. Reunion is not just a legislative program, it is a philosophy and also a way of working. Citizens feel that the EU institutions are not doing enough for them. If the EU is to survive as the force for good we believe it to be, it needs to address the citizens' concerns and in language that does not require interpretation. Policies must make a political and practical difference in the people's everyday lives. We must introduce the idea of value-added citizenship. And together with our trio partners, the Dutch and the Slovaks, we have been guided by 5 pillars in the preparation for our presidency, aligned with the EU's strategic agenda, which was adopted by the European Council back in June 2014, namely jobs, growth and competitiveness, empowerment and protection for all citizens, energy union and a forward-looking climate policy, freedom, security and justice, and the union as a strong global actor. We have then identified 6 areas which fit into these baskets and in which we feel we can make genuine progress during these 6 months. These are the single market, migration, security, the neighborhood policy, social inclusion, and the maritime sector. These priorities blend some of the European Union's most pressing challenges with some of our natural areas of competence. The first priority that I would like to discuss is our neighborhood policy. The countries bordering the southern Mediterranean are facing serious challenges, including armed conflict, terrorism, extremism, and radicalization. This is crucial to our citizens' sense of security and to promoting also the European values of responsibility and solidarity. The Maltese Presidency will devote particular attention to the EU's southern neighborhood, and later on this month, Malta will be hosting the Arlem, you are familiar with the Arlem plenary. We are proud that this is the first time that a plenary has been hosted by a member state holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and we welcome that one of the reports to be discussed and adopted during this plenary will be on cross-border cooperation in the Mediterranean region. The stabilization of Libya through a peaceful transition will be a key priority of our presidency, and Malta, as a presidency, will focus attention on Libya within regional organizations such as the 5+5 and the Union for the Mediterranean. It remains committed to offer its services and facilities to facilitate the political dialogue and reconciliation between all Libyan parties. Similar commitment will be shown to ensure that the democratic transition in Tunisia remains on track, and in this regard, Malta will be at the forefront to support Tunisia in its endeavors towards stability. We will also support the European Union and the international efforts towards a breakthrough in the Syrian conflict, and we will also continue to promote efforts to resume the Middle East peace process between Israel and Palestine. Relations between the European Union and Turkey will feature prominently in the neighborhood policy. We believe that Turkey remains an important strategic partner in managing irregular migration and the protection of the Union's external border. However, we need to be firm on our values and on Turkey's observance of its commitments as a candidate country and under the European Convention on Human Rights. At the same time, it is imperative that we keep our doors open with a view to encourage the Turkish government to stay on the path of reform and progress on rule of law and democratic institutions. We will also continue to engage with the Eastern neighborhood and undertake the necessary preparations for the Eastern Partnership Summit to be held later on this year. Migration. Migration is one of the major transnational issues of our time, and one that I believe will continue to grow in importance. On the 22nd of February this month, alongside with the Bureau meeting of your committee and the Ireland plenary, we will be hosting a conference on migration which will address the root causes of migration itself and the reception of migrants. Only last Friday, the external dimension of migration, with a focus on the central Mediterranean route, was the subject of the Malta Informal Summit, where the EU heads agreed on a long-term and concrete set of measures aimed to deepen their long-term cooperation with African countries to tackle the root causes of migration. In this context, the heads paid particular attention to the European Union's relationship with Libya. The heads in Malta agreed on a 10-point plan setting out the immediate operational measurements to assist the Libyan authorities in developing their capacity to control the land and also the sea borders, whilst also combat transit and smuggling activities, thereby reducing the number of irregular migrants and also save lives at the same time. On the internal front, we need to strengthen and streamline the common European asylum system as a means of sharing responsibility more fairly amongst member states. This includes the proposal to revise the Dublin regulation and the proposal bolstering the European Asylum Support Office, on which the Maltese Presidency will seek to make as much progress as possible in order to see that this office will be transformed into a fully fledged European agency by the end of our presidency this June. The continued implementation of the Council decisions for the relocation of 160,000 migrants in need of international protection will also be a key element. At the end of a 2-year period for this to happen draws near. This morning, we followed up in Malta on measures agreed at the Valletta Summit on Migration in November 2015, particularly with respect to third countries, in order to address some of the root causes of economic migration and the need for better international cooperation. And that is why today Malta held a senior officials meeting in the same configuration of November 2015 as the Valletta Summit. It was also addressed by the High Rep Federica Mogherini, and the idea was not only to take stock of what has been implemented, but also to identify what is not being implemented, why, and also lead the way forward. Turning to the single market, we consider it to be the Union's greatest tool. And if we collectively manage to fully exploit the single market and develop the digital single market, as well as also complete the internal energy market, we can bring tangible benefits to our economies, our businesses, and our families by removing barriers to trade and improving protection and access to services for consumers. We aim to deliver as much as possible in this area by improving and concluding key legislations that are already being negotiated, and in fact the Maltese Presidency already informally reached the trialogue agreements on the mobile roaming, and yesterday also on the portability. The Capital Markets Union will also be given its due importance during the Maltese Presidency. Following the horrific terror attacks in the past months, as a union, we must remain vigilant to ensure the security of our citizens. And against the backdrop of international landscape that is increasingly volatile, the Maltese Presidency will contribute towards concrete progress on the proposals that address regional and global challenges, while upholding the values that underpin the very existence of the Union. The European Union's first line of work in this area remains effective diplomacy, and in this respect, we will work closely with the European External Action Services under the umbrella of the EU's global strategy to manage complex challenges of migration, terrorism, and hybrid threats. Social policy is also something that the Maltese government holds dear, and this is an area where we now, as a presidency, hope that our experience can rub off on our European partners. Work here will be guided by the close consultation with social partners, civil society, and citizens in order to advance gender equality and rights of minorities and vulnerable groups. We want to ensure that women across the European Union have access to the labor market. The European Union will be increasingly dependent on the seas and oceans. The sustainability and continuing development of the maritime sector under the EU integrated maritime policy fits naturally with the legislative priorities of an outward-looking island nation in the southern Mediterranean. In addition, the sector provides a diverse spectrum of innovative research and commercial activities that could be developed into a high added value job opportunities in line with the Blue Growth Initiative towards growth and competitiveness. International ocean governance will also be formally put on Malta's agenda with the aim of ensuring political endorsement on the way forward on a more coherent, comprehensive, and effective EU policy to improve the international ocean governance framework and the stability, the sustainability of our oceans. The Western Mediterranean Sea Basin Initiative is expected to be launched early this year, targeting a specific geographical area of interest to member states and neighbors. The initiative will build on the existing structures within the context of blue economy to improve maritime governance, exploit strengths, and address weaknesses whilst ensuring a sustainable approach. Finally, I would like to turn on an area that is of mutual interest, the cohesion policy. I believe that we need to make the results of the cohesion policy more visible to our citizens. In this regard, and also with a view to the future of the cohesion policy post-2020, we would like to center the debate around cohesion on three main elements: addressing the needs on the ground so that citizens can see the results and understand the added value of the European Union. Number two, simplifying the policy for those involved in its implementation. And thirdly, developing a forward-looking policy that will address new challenges and innovative solutions. We firmly believe that it is necessary to address the needs and aspirations of our citizens more effectively and in a timely fashion. Given the deficit that exists between what we are actually doing and the perception of the citizens, we feel that now more than ever, we should focus on bridging the gap between the Union and its citizens in a tangible manner. The cohesion policy is a central component for the realization of the European Union objectives. Whilst we acknowledge that cohesion policy is increasingly be seen as an investment policy, it is important that the debate on cohesion policy should continue to take place and emphasize on its goal of reducing the disparities between the regions and to achieve social, economic and territorial cohesion. For the successful implementation of the cohesion policy, it is important that the specific needs of different territories are recognized and that the implementation framework ensures the sufficient flexibility to support initiatives that address changing needs at regional, national and EU level. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, and this is probably where the biggest challenges lies, and where we feel that the policy could do more to act as an enabler for the member states and the regions. A one-size-fits-all approach will not yield results, and the future cohesion policy must be sufficiently flexible to address the specific situations on the grounds. In addition, further efforts at simplifying the process for the shared management of EU funding are needed. And in this regard, we support the work of the high-level working group on simplification and the Commission's proposed streamlining of processes in the revision of the financial regulation. Simplification, we believe, that must be at the heart of these processes, and it must also be accompanied by a reduction in administrative burden as well as more proportionality. We need to have a policy which can actually be implemented by our beneficiaries, and by that I also include SMEs. We just cannot afford to continue having programs that are heavily burdened by administration or several layers of checks that often also overlap and are hampering and making the implementation process ever more cumbersome. We need also to ensure that the cohesion policy is able to respond quickly and effectively through targeted investment where it is most needed and investing in key sectors for growth and job creation. Cohesion policy should remain an integral part of the EU budget and an important tool to strengthen and support member states' potential and the success of the European Union project. And in this regard, we also believe that the cohesion policy can act as a forward-looking policy which can address future challenges faced by the Union and enable the development of innovative solutions. And that is why the Maltese Presidency will hold a General Affairs Council meeting dealing with cohesion and also an informal ministerial meeting for the cohesion ministers, which will then also contribute to the cohesion forum, which will be held at the end of June. Mr. President, I would like now to listen to your members, and I look forward to hear their opinion on how we can work together in the coming months. And I would like once again to thank you and your administration for the fruitful cooperation we had in the run-up to the presidency.